everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Ariadne. As you can see, she's sleeping, so let's keep it down. That's how she's most often depicted. But who is she? What does she have to do with this story and this mystery? What's her background? Why is she so important? Why do I go on droning on and on about her? Well, she was the daughter of King Minos. She was a Cretan princess, Minoan Crete. And her roots go back to perhaps a goddess you've seen before, the snake goddess, the Minoan snake goddess, right? She's grasping two serpents in her hands, and she looks a bit fierce. And then Ariadne kind of evolved out of her as well. But here's how the story goes. Her father, King Minos, created a labyrinth. I just happen to have one right here. This is a model of the Chartres Labyrinth, Chartres Cathedral in France. And at the center, he placed a fearsome creature who just happened to be Ariadne's half-brother, the Minotaur. He was half man, half bull. And he resided at the center of this dark labyrinth. Now, every year, a tribute was expected, a bit like the Hunger Games, where 7 men and 7 women, or girls and boys, they were often younger, they would be made to see if they could get to the center of the labyrinth, defeat the Minotaur, and escape. No one ever did. Now, this labyrinth was built by Daedalus. You may know him from the story of Icarus. He was the father of Icarus. And he created the wings made of wax, and Icarus flew too far to the sun and fell. Daedalus had built this to be inextricable. So once you got to the middle, the dark winding paths, you'd never find your way out again. So you would either be destroyed and eaten by the Minotaur, or you would be lost forever in the twists and turns and die a dark, lonely death. Well, along comes Theseus, our hero of the story. And he is one of the tributes who's going to be forced to go into the labyrinth and face off with the Minotaur. Our princess here sees him and immediately falls in love with him, perhaps because he's tall, handsome, heroic, and often walks around naked. She decides that she must help this young man, and somehow she must be with him. So she devises a scheme and calls him aside secretly and says, "I'm going to help you get out of this mess. I will help you get into the labyrinth, safely to the center, defeat my brother-in-law, and make your way out safely again." He says, "Great." And she says, "One condition. You must marry me afterwards. I must be yours forever. You must be mine forever." He says, "Okay. What else can I do? Otherwise, it's certain death." But it's not a bad deal. By all depictions, she's quite beautiful. And smart. So they devise a plan, along with the help of Daedalus. And what she's going to give him is a sword, very helpful in decapitating your enemy, and a ball of thread. It's often called a ball of thread, but it's not. It's actually a clue of thread. actually a spindle of thread. And I just happen to have it right here. Yep. This is what's called a navette in France. It's an old weaving spindle. And it's called a navette because of its shape, very much like a boat, a little boat, which is what navette means. Almost like a dugout canoe. And inside is the red thread, the same color thread Ariadne used to give to Theseus. And the idea was that he would slowly unravel this. He would tie it to the door upon entering the labyrinth, slowly unravel this as he went, until he got to the center, cut off the head of the Minotaur, and then he could retrace his steps, go back out, and reunite with Ariadne. And marry her, fulfill his promise. Now, a bit about this. There's a lot of feminine energy in this story, we should say. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to imagine what this could represent. You might see the same shape in the mandorla, did I say that right? That surrounds the Virgin Mary sometimes, but it is the sacred yoni of the goddess, right? It also doesn't take too much imagination to imagine what a stream of red coming out of this object might represent. In addition to that, the labyrinth was also synonymous with the womb of the goddess. And you may have seen depictions that compare the head of a bull to the female reproductive system. You can put two and two together, and you can sort of see where things are going here. Ariadne was really the focal point here. She was the goddess of the feminine energy here. And that represented Theseus's voyage, right, into darkness, into the center, and once again back out into the light. Almost a rebirth, a re-entering of the womb, and being reborn once again, returning to the light. She was also a wisdom goddess, right, Sophia. First, Theseus accepts her help. He accepts divine wisdom. But later in the story, we'll see that he rejects her. And that's when things fall apart. Things go as planned. Theseus makes it to the center of the labyrinth, cuts off the head of the bull, and exits safely. Theseus and Ariadne sail away in a boat. Unfortunately, they're shipwrecked on the Isle of Naxos. Some say it's on the Isle of Dia, but anyway, Ariadne ends up on Naxos, we'll say, along with Theseus and his wrecked ship, which he repairs. And while he's doing all this repairing, she falls asleep. And that's the way we see her most often depicted, fast asleep. Theseus sees her sleeping very deeply, decides he's going to abandon her. He's not just abandoning poor Ariadne here, he's abandoning wisdom itself. And things go very badly for him. All things go downhill. And I'll leave it to you to look up the rest of that story if you like. But we'll focus on Ariadne here because her story takes a very nice turn. She wakes up and sees Theseus sailing away. Much to her sorrow, she is brokenhearted. But within mere seconds, who should swoop in, sweep her off her feet, but the god Bacchus, or Dionysus, if you prefer, the god of wine. He sees her sleeping there, falls in love with her immediately, and without wasting any time, asked to be her husband. Well, she seems to have much better prospects at this point, and so she goes with the god of wine. Who wouldn't? Free wine forever. And they live happily ever after until she dies, because she is mortal and he is a god, so he goes on. But not before he takes a wedding gift that was given to her, which was a crown given to her by Venus, fashioned by Vulcan or Hephaestus, if you prefer. Dionysus Bacchus takes her crown and decides to give her a sign of immortality and casts it into the heavens, where it becomes Corona Borealis, also known as Ariadne's crown. And so that is her symbol in the heavens. At this point, I have to draw your attention to something. Wait a second. So, I was recently at the Louvre, and I borrowed this. I'll give it back, I promise. You probably all know Poussin's Shepherds of Arcadia, et in Arcadia ego. And you probably already heard me drone on about who these figures are in the heavens, who I believe they are. You can believe me or not. This is the kneeling Hercules, constellation of Hercules, which was called the Kneeler before it was called Hercules. And over here is the figure of Boots. Boots, if you look in the old star atlases, he's always glancing backwards. He is holding a staff of some kind, and he's always got his foot resting on something. A stony, rocky outcrop or the top of a mountain, but he's always got his one leg lifted like this. There's no doubt in my mind who these two are. They're pointing to something between them, and if you look to the heavens and you look to these two constellations, what is laying in between them? Corona Borealis. Ariadne's crown. So ignore what's carved on the tomb for the moment and just think about the heavens and what these two are pointing at. They're saying, look here. Look to the crown of that goddess. Why? Why? So what is Poussin telling us? Why do we need to look to this crown? Why is he pointing to Arcadia and saying we need to look to the crown of Ariadne? How are those things related? Well, here's one possibility. Around Poussin's time, he would have been aware of this book, which is called the Rudolphine Tablets, right? And it's a record of most of the known stars, of the time. It was put together by Johann Kepler, along with data he gleaned from Tycho Brahe. And this was the most complete star catalog of the day. Highly accurate too. And so many astronomers and learned people were awaiting for these tables to come out because they needed them for navigation, surveying, more esoteric occult work. These tables were so useful. If you knew where every star in the sky would be at any given time, you could just reach to this and it would tell you. It didn't matter if it was day or night. You would know exactly where Sirius was. You could calculate down to the second where it was passing. So this was an invaluable book that was available in the time of Poussin. And he would have been well aware of it, considering who his circle of friends were. This would have been well known, and as I said, it was very much an anticipated work, highly anticipated work, and so he would have gleaned some knowledge from this, to be sure, if he was in fact including constellations in his paintings, and if those constellations were giving us clues. This would have been a big help to him. So let's look at the constellation of Corona Borealis, Ariadne's crown, and is there anything in there that could tell us about the Oak Island mystery? Well, I mentioned the bright star in the center of the crown, Alphecca, Gnosia, Astaroth. And let's find it in his tables here. You can see down here, Corona Borea, northern crown. We have to go through all the stars that are in the crown to find the brightest one, which is the gem in the crown. It's also called gemma, by the way, which means gem, jewel. And here it is, Lucidum, which is the name he gave it. And its latitude, marked here, is 44.33. Oak Island is 44.30. Just above it, where the Gold River sits, and where you see this sickle or scythe of a bay just above it, that's 44.33. This is incredibly close to the island. It's spitting distance, right? And that's uncanny to me. That's quite a coincidence. Is this 100% proof? It's interesting. I don't know if it's 100%, but you got these shepherds pointing to a tomb. They're pointing to Arcadia, which was the name of Nova Scotia, the area around Oak Island. And they're pointing to a crown in the center whose brightest star is the same latitude as the island. I find all that very, very interesting, along with all the other evidence, So I don't know. Let me know what you think. I'd really be interested to hear what you all think about that as well. All right. If you take the phrase "et in Arcadia ego," re-scramble them a bit, you get the perfect anagram that says Ariadne Goetica. The Goetica was a collection of Solomonic magic. It was called Goetia. I'll show you a couple of books here. Solomonic magic. Wisdom of Solomon. The keys of Solomon the king. The Hygromantia, magical practices of Solomon. So what's all this talking about? Well, there is a tradition that says Solomon enslaved demonic spirits to assist him in building the temple in Jerusalem. That he was given a magical ring with a seal upon it, which some say is a pentagram, some say is a hexagram, and I've seen some very strange other interpretations of it. So we'll have to ask Solomon for sure. But with it, he's able to subdue and control a whole host of demons. 72 of them, in fact. And these correspond to 72 angelic forces on the other side. So there's always a balance going on, right? So what in the world would Solomonic magic have to do with this story of a Cretan princess, a Minoan princess? Well, let's go back to her crown again in the sky. It is in a ring shape. That's just why it was called a crown. It's a ring of stars. And the brightest one in the center is called Alpheka, which means the bright one of the broken ring. So it was kind of, in some cultures, it was a ring with a diamond center. Sometimes it's a broken plate or a dish or a cup, and has many interpretations, but most often it is a crown, either a metal crown, sometimes it's a laurel wreath, and we see these characters in Poussin's painting wearing laurel wreaths as well, so that may be an indication there. But anyway, that central star, Alpheka, has many other names. One is Gnosia, which means gnosis or knowledge, particularly divine knowledge, sacred knowledge, and comes directly from Knossos, right? The kingdom, the palace where Ariadne and her father, King Minos, lived, under which the labyrinth existed. It had a further name called Astaroth, which is very interesting because Astaroth is one of the 72 demons that Solomon subdued to build his temple. So there, perhaps, is the link between Solomon and Ariadne, because he appears in the Goetia, and hence the anagram Ariadne Goetica, referring to these two things. I think Poussin is referring, or maybe not Poussin, whoever came up with Et in Arcadia Ego was referring to this constellation, I believe, and to that particular star, and to all the meanings and symbology therein. Okay. Furthermore, now we have to dive into alchemy just a little bit. Ariadne holds a special place in alchemy. I have here a book called Le Filet d'Ariadne, The Thread of Ariadne. It's an old alchemical treatise, and the idea here is that alchemy is very much like a labyrinth. If you're going to go out and create the Philosopher's Stone, if you're going to embark on the great work, well, it's not enough that you know how to get to the center and create the stone itself, because the stone exists here in darkness. And now you must take your work, retrace your steps, and take all you have learned and created and bring it back out into the world, into the light again. So it's not enough just to go to the center and create what you sought to create. Now you have to bring it back and put it to use, in a sense. And so Ariadne's Thread was a book that told you how to do that. Some books may have told you how to create the stone, but once you've got it, how do you safely bring it back from that initial creation? Now, she is the mistress of the labyrinth, right? But what would Solomon have to do with these labyrinths? Well, it just so happens that about the time that these Gothic cathedrals were being built in France, and remember, this is a copy of the Labyrinth in Chartres. About that time, some documents were discovered. A bunch of ancient alchemical documents, and within them was found this description and illustration. Well, it's not called the Labyrinth of Minos or the Labyrinth of Crete or the Labyrinth of Ariadne. It's called the Labyrinth of Solomon. Still a bit of a mystery. Did the Temple of Solomon have a labyrinth? It certainly has labyrinthine passageways beneath it that we believe the Templars were excavating and discovered the temple treasures hidden in. But I just wanted to show you that these things are not unconnected. Ariadne, Solomon, the labyrinths, it all comes together. The Gothic cathedrals. And remember that these cathedrals not only had labyrinths in the middle, but these were Christian edifices, Catholic constructs. They had labyrinths, and in the center of some of these labyrinths were depictions of Ariadne, the Minotaur, and Theseus. What were they doing there? Very strange indeed, yeah? So anyway, we found this thread running through this story, right? And this particular sculpture kept turning up in the strangest places, and it seems to be a symbol of a very secret society, a society within other societies that were already secret. We see an ancient depiction of this sculpture. A few were made, owned by the Medici family. It's now in the Uffizi Museum, I believe, in Italy. We also find this at the Vatican. When the Vatican Museum was created, this was the second acquisition. It also turns up in the home of Thomas Jefferson in Monticello. He's got a fairly good-sized one sitting in front of his fireplace. It was a gift that he received while he was ambassador to France. And our good friend Poussin, who hinted at her existence, her importance in his Shepherds of Arcadia painting, he had one as well. But it was probably even smaller than this one. He fashioned it himself, he sculpted it, and he would carry it around with himself in his coat pocket or wherever, and he always kept it about him on his person. It was that important to him. This master painter who, he was exposed to all the great art of the day, and he knew personally the great masters of the day, of which he was one. But of all the works of art that he was exposed to and learned about, this was the one he decided to hand sculpt and carry about with him wherever he went. What was so important? Very, very odd, isn't it? We also see one at Versailles. Again, it's the same one. King Louis XIV commissions at least one of these for his gardens, and it is the same size as the Medici and the Vatican Ariadnes. So it's sitting out there in Versailles Gardens, and we're going to try and find it. He also has a smaller one that sits on a mantle inside the chateau, and I can show a picture of that as well. Well, I've droned on long enough about this, but I wanted to take you on my little adventure at Versailles and show you my attempt to find this statue in the gardens of Versailles, which was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But anyway, without further ado, let's take a look and see what I found at Versailles. We're here in the gardens of Versailles, seeking out the sleeping Ariadne. I've been worried. I came here to see this statue, show it to you. They're doing some construction work here, and it doesn't appear to be where it's supposed to be. Maybe it's been moved, so let's see. We're on the hunt for the sleeping goddess, Ariadne. We are still looking. No one's been able to answer my question about where the statue is moved. The obvious answer is somebody read our book, found out this clue. It's right out in the open under people's noses. And so they took Ariadne and hid her somewhere. Still looking. Well, I did it. finally found the mysterious Ariadne at Versailles. She tried to hide, did her best, but they scouted her out in a game of hide and seek here. There she is. She's under wraps. Let me get you an inside peek here. But even then you can't see her. She's covered with a tarp. Yeah, unmistakable shape of the statue. All crated up. So I imagine she's quite special if they're covering her up. I imagine for the Olympics. A lot of things here are being shut down, cordoned off. There's places you can't go. Getting ready for the big crowds and possible terrorism of the Olympics. But there is sleeping Ariadne. I wish I had a better picture for you. But I'm so glad I found her. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you want to learn a bit more about Ariadne and her connections to this mystery, and a whole lot more about Oak Island, about the Gothic cathedrals, about the menorah of the Temple of Solomon, the treasures of Solomon, the Knights Templar, and how it all connects, I very much encourage you to please look into buying this book. My co-author, Corian Wall, my esteemed co-researcher and friend, and I put this together. It's a labor of love, and we very much think that you will enjoy it if you are a fan of the Oak Island show or of these mysteries in general. It was quite a lot of work, and we put all we could fit into this, and with any luck we'll sell enough that our publisher will say, hey guys, do you want to write a second one? Because, well, we've certainly got enough material. So, fingers crossed, and to all those who have already purchased it, thank you so much. And those who have come out to the book events and the signings, and who have corresponded with us, those who have left wonderful reviews, all of you, thank you so much. I'm very humbled by it all. We both are. I could speak for Corian. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you all, and I'm going to keep putting these videos out. I hope you enjoy them, and we'll keep digging and get to the bottom of all this. Thank you once again. Thank you all.